Hello there. It is 12:58 p.m. on Saturday the 7th of March, 2026, and I am technically hiking. So this may have been a bad idea, because I find, as one might expect, the second I feel that, hey, this terrain is gentle, I could probably record something here if I pleased. That's usually when something changes. And as I say it, almost on cue, looks like we got a downhill. So, better than an uphill, at least for vocal cadence, but I'm feeling inspired, and, the past 2 nights I have not been able to actually record at the end of the day, which, I'm fine with that, because pretty much got nothing but time, and, I'm a big fan of texture in audio, and I think that, especially for something like the trail, as opposed to the bike ride, which would be more like noise than texture. But yeah, like hiking right now, it's let me set the scene. So it's been very rainy over the past, 8 hours or so. It started sometime early this morning, and it's like not actively raining, but everything is very, very moist, and the air is thick with a fairly impenetrable fog. My vision is probably about 50 feet before it gets challenging, and it's fairly quiet. I would tell you to listen, but there's nothing to hear. And yeah, I was just walking along, listening to a podcast, having a conversation in my head about how egregiously inappropriate it seems to hear advertising on hiking-related podcasts. Not so much the treks. I feel like the trek kind of keeps it in-house a little bit more, or maybe I just like them more. But listening to this other podcast, and it's about hikers and interviewing hikers and stuff like that, which is pretty fun to listen to when you're in the midst of doing it, because, I don't even know. It's like, man, I can only think of crude metaphors, but what is it? Here you go. It's like having a Sunday on top of a Sunday. Listening to someone describe what it's like to be a hiker while doing it. But yeah, nothing but time, a little distracted. I thought I'd go ahead and make a clip because I was having that dialogue. Yeah, I guess that's what it was, but hold on, we got some people here, so in medias res. What's up, y'all? How's it going?
How's it going? How about yourself?
Doing well.
It's lunchtime.
It is lunchtime, and looks like the weather might actually cooperate. I don't know.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, there's a little bit of fear-mongering going on back at the mountain crossings. Yeah, some dude was telling me that it's going to be severe thunderstorms today, which maybe there will, but
I think there was a chance, honestly.
yeah.
I think it's later this evening. I think it's like over in March.
That's what I had seen the last time I checked, but
We stayed at Both Clouds Hostel just last night, and about 4-ish,
Yeah.
it
Started
did
raining.
for about 10 minutes or so, that it kind of went away.
Gotcha. How was the hostel?
It was
Fantastic.
amazing.
Was it? Yeah. I've always heard good things, but I've never gone yet myself.
Lucky and Scully were amazing. The breakfast Lucky cooked was super good.
I love breakfast.
Yeah, I love breakfast too. I'm a
Yeah.
big breakfast guy.
Yeah, me too.
But we thought we would go ahead and cook a meal for
Yeah,
lunch in
sure.
case we can't cook tonight if it's raining too much.
For sure.
I'd only get rid of some weight.
That's better in you than on you, for sure. Well,
Yeah.
I'll leave you guys to it.
Good luck.
Thank you. Happy trails. All right. I did see those people at Mountain Crossing. They were doing a little bit of getting rid of some heavier stuff, so can't blame them there. Yeah, do I have much more to say about the egregiousness of advertisements? I guess, yeah, it's such a put-off to me to be like listening to something. It reminds me, when I was in college, I attempted to be on the Georgia State cycling team, and I found that never in my life can I remember hating biking more. There were certainly times it kind of came close, but I think the least fun I ever had on my bike was competitively. It was just like so draining. Biking was so pure to me. I've been doing it since I was 15, and it's always been my favorite way to like listen to music. I kind of experience music all the time with exercise. I don't tend to like listen to music if I'm just sitting still. When I'm sitting still, that's when I tend to gravitate towards podcasts. But in any case, yeah, listening to like what I would consider a tale of purity, which is kind of like, in an essence, you could frame hiking in that if you're being generous. To hear Spotify and Shopify commercials, I'm just like, ugh, dude, like, ew, like, stop trying to sell me a lifestyle or convince me to buy something, you know, like, I don't like that, you know. Anyway, yeah, so I thought I'd go ahead and try to do a chronology, and then I've got a couple of list items that I think might be interesting. And my shoes, I'm finding they are the rubber is very rigid, I suppose. It doesn't have a lot of grip. It has a lot of durability, which I think is a fair trade, like, because I don't think you could have something super grippy that wasn't also softer. But the fact that like these shoes have, look as good as they do after the road walk and everything else, like the actual grippy parts of them, I'm impressed, because I wore some Solomon, I think they were called cross checks or something like that, but some sort of a like shoe that had similar aggressive tread, and I just feel like it really pooped out very quickly doing the road walk in Key West. But anyway, I'm just my environment is affecting my thinking, because this downhill is continued, and I need to be a little bit more cautious because it's wet, and these shoes, as I said, are a little slippy. So yes, I guess I don't really remember when I made that clip yesterday. I know it was sort of in the afternoon or something like that. So the only thing that I can think of that was worth mentioning about the conclusion of yesterday, actually no, there is a lot to talk about. Yeah, okay, so I had lunch at Woody Gap, as I had planned to do, and that was actually a lot more socially profitable than I had expected. I was just generally having a good time with the people who were there, but then I must say, with a certain type of humility, a beautiful woman later showed up, who was sort of the representative for a company called, I think, Polar Steps, which is this tracking app for these kinds of adventures that I am honestly interested in checking out. She arrived at that gap. She was walking her dog and came over and talked to me, and we had a nice little conversation about, you know, life in general, but then also like what she was doing here. I'd recommend checking out Polar Steps if you're doing any kind of adventure. It looks like, is this an advertisement? Am I already contradicting myself? That was fast. That might be a record. But yeah, it seemed like a cool app, like a way to kind of visually and it was like a multimodal way of tracking someone's progress across space, which I do like tracking progress across space. Historically, Strava has done that pretty well for me, and then the podcasts are a nice supplement. But anyway, I talked with her for a bit, which, you know, that's always a treat. You know, it's like running into a candy bar when you got an extreme sweet tooth. But she was also a very interesting person, and certainly on a mission. And it seemed like a fun job that she has, like kind of traveling around the U.S., particularly right now in the states that are associated with the Appalachian Trail, and just trying to do, I guess, word of mouth advertising for the product. I would take that job for sure. It sounds like a lot of fun. So anyway, that was at Woody Gap, and then there were a couple of other people there, actual hikers that I enjoyed speaking with, and yeah, just a solid hour. The weather was great. There were picnic tables, trash cans, everything a girl could want. So good little break there. And then I was kind of shocked. I'd kind of realized, even though I thought I was kind of on more of a knife's edge, that I basically had overbought for food. So I realized that I was a lot closer to mountain crossings than I kind of originally anticipated. I think when I was doing my math for how much food I would need, I kind of factored in, I either did factor in or I didn't factor in. I guess I did factor in the approach trail, but maybe I just didn't factor in that I would be so full from breakfast that I wouldn't really need much food that day. So whatever the case, I had some extra food. So I kind of feasted a little bit at Woods Hole, which is to say ate 140 calories instead of 70 of these little chicken pouches that I bought. And then I pressed on, and there truly was nothing to say at all about the walk from Woody Gap to where I ultimately camped, which was just about 500 feet short of the Blood Mountain summit. And when I got there, there was actually a ridge runner, and I guess I can be honest now, but I don't hang my food. I don't do anything with my food. I do usually put my pack sort of like sacrificially out so that if a bear were to come by, it wouldn't have to come inside of my tent necessarily. But by and large, I don't do anything special with storing my food. I mean, honestly, my tactic is to sleep in places that people aren't likely to sleep, and just through sheer luck. And well, not even luck really, but it's more about the logistics of bears getting acclimated to associating certain areas with food. You know, if you camp in this random spot with one tent plot, like, very unlikely that there is an animal that has an association with food in that spot, you know. So that's my logic anyway. But yeah, the ridge runner came out who was camping at this, did I mention that I met a ridge runner? I already forgot. It kind of overlapped my stories in my head. But suffice it to say, camped at this spot, there was a ridge runner there, and the first thing she asked me was how I was storing my food. And I was like, dang. It was like PCT method. And she said, well, I'm not going to ask you to hike out because that would be a long hike out, but just make sure that you really are meticulous with your hang tonight. And I was like, yes, ma'am. But yeah, unfortunately, I was less than honest, you know. I did, for what it was worth, try to at least preemptively accept the responsibility of whatever might happen over the night, because this area that's called Girard Gap, that it's like a 30-mile, well, it's not 30 miles, I don't know how many miles, 10 miles or something. It's a stretch where you're technically required to have a bear canister in order to camp there, but, you know, anecdotal evidence is not indication of anything real, for sure. But I don't know. I just feel like, again, just like with cycling, honestly, when I talk about how, like, I don't know how much of my success is due to skill versus luck. I also don't know how much of that, like the fact that I've never been rousted violently by a bear, I don't know how much is that due to my own specific policies, or is it just because my number isn't up yet, you know? Better as always to just not know those numbers and not know the answers to those questions. But in any case, yeah, the ridge runner, she invited me over to an area closer to her camp to have dinner. And we talked for at least, I would say, 2 hours, which was very cool. Shout out to Baby Talk, which was her trail name. And I thought that was really funny. That's the most entertaining and original trail name I've heard so far, that I was like, I like that. Like, this, it sounds so stupid, you know. And as someone who goes by moron, I know stupid. So I appreciated that, got a kick out of it. And she was a fun person to talk to, very, like, inquisitive and, you know, a thoughtful kind of person. I don't really remember too much about the conversation explicitly, but we definitely, you know, of course, had to touch on AI for a little bit so I could spread the good word. Oh my God, how is this possible that this stick is even getting inside my shoe? So that was cool. We talked until about 8:15 and then called it for the evening. And yeah, went to bed immediately after that. It was kind of interesting. For some reason this morning, I woke up at about 4 a.m. and I just felt kind of stark awake. And I don't know why. It wasn't really an insomnia feeling, because the way I typically would describe the insomnia that I have had historically, which historically did take place sometime around 2 and 4 a.m., where I would just like wake up. But usually that was accompanied by like a lot of like being hot and also having an accelerated heart rate. But this morning it felt more like a gentle wake up for whatever reason, which I was fine with. And I felt very led to do some digital needfuls, which I don't think I've actually done my true full stack of digital needfuls since I've been out here. And, that's like 6 days. 6 days without needfuls makes Ken a dull boy, my dude. But yeah, I went through, and I guess maybe it's just because I'm like in a paring down kind of mode at this point, like just enjoying, making sure that my backpack is packed the way that I like it, and that I don't have anything extra, and that everything is like arranged in an efficient and reasonable way, And so, I don't know, there's really not much to say about it, other than the fact that I just really enjoyed going through all of my things until about 5:15 or whatever, and then, just feeling good about the state of my phone. It just felt like rearranging furniture. I guess if I'm honest, shout out to my parents. My mom, she will occasionally rearrange the furniture in the house. Seems like it's usually more often done with outdoor furniture. Mom, you can correct me if that's not correct. But, she would always take immense pride in the reorganization of the same pieces. And I just find that I have a very similar kind of joy from taking something, not adding or subtracting anything from it necessarily. Sometimes you do. And then rearranging them into a fresh organization, Something satisfying about that. Something visceral. But yeah, that's how I spent the early hour of my morning before the sun came up, and then went back to bed for about an hour or so, and then got up just about 6:30, and I think the Ridge Runner had already left, maybe. I didn't hear her leave at all, didn't hear her do anything. She got out quiet as a mouse. I was impressed. I expected to at least hear, like, the shaking out of her tent fly from all the rain, but not even a single flap, my dude. Perhaps she wasn't even there, who knows. But anyway, got up, had my little breakfast, got all my stuff in order, had some coffee, all that stuff, and then I hit the road, hit the trail. It was about 8:40 when I hit the trail, if memory serves. So today's going to probably be a little paltry for mileage. Certainly still can manage high teens, but I'm thinking it'd probably be a miracle to do the 20 that I might have originally set out to do. But who knows, the day is young. Well, not really. I've got, 4 hours of daylight left? Who knows? Anyway, hit the trail, and I have to say, just speaking from my own experience specifically, not trying to judge or moralize anyone else's experience of anything, but I have always found the Blood Mountain climb to be extremely easy. Like, perhaps, in my opinion, and this could be verified if we can figure out what the actual grade of the climb is. Maybe it's the duration that people don't like, but Blood Mountain has a reputation of being a very intense thing to overcome, and that has just never been my experience. Every single time I've done it, which is certainly less than 10, but every single time, by the time I'm at the top, I'm like, wow, that was really fast. I wish more climbs were like this. But, again, I understand why it has that reputation. It is the highest mountain in Georgia on the Appalachian Trail. But still, it was nice. Not a big deal at all. And then at the top, I met a very cool guy named Hunter. Shout out to Hunter. And he is from Northeast PA, Scranton area. And we talked the whole way down. He's 29. And I was like, oh, that's when I first hiked the trail. And so, it was kind of like talking to my former self in a certain sense. But yeah, we just gabbed the whole way down, all the 2 miles to the amazing nexus point that is mountain crossings. And then it was business time, my dude. I've been looking forward to mountain crossings. I always look forward to mountain crossings. It is extra special to be at mountain crossings when you're actually through hiking, because that's basically the first area where you can, make up for any mistakes that you've made. You can you can buy new gear if you need. You can send gear home if you need. They have great food if you need, and it's only 40 miles in, so it's like you're most likely going to make it there if you just keep going, no matter how miserable of a time you're having. 4 days, 10 miles a day, it's possible. And so it really is like the first checkpoint on the Appalachian Trail, where it feels like you've made some undeletable progress. It's like, okay, good. Like, you check in with yourself a little bit, make sure you're still having fun and that you don't want for anything. And yeah, also for me personally, being there this time, it's just so much fun to see how excited everyone else is about things that are going on. And honestly, even people who don't look excited, I'm just like, damn, like, I wonder what's been going on with you, because honestly, if you can be in a bad mood after the past few days of weather we've had, then I would just say it doesn't bode well for the future, because you gotta, again, your smile is perhaps your greatest asset out here, because smiling through all of the insane happenings of the Appalachian Trail is a much more efficient way to get through it. If time dilation through perception is any indication, whatever you can do to make this fun will mean that it never feels longer than you can bear, So, yeah, mountain crossings was great. I was really hoping to be able to buy something from one of the places, like the little country store that used to abut the Blood Mountain cabins, but apparently that store doesn't exist anymore. This is a really cool view up here. This is just, I'm on top of like a little baby ridge, and it's extremely foggy still. It would be spooky if it was, but it's not. It's more just like, it's kind of just cool. It feels like putting like a really cool skin on a car. Is that what they call those skins? I don't know, but it's like taking something that was already cool and then just dressing it up a little bit more and making it even cooler. That's what the fog is like right now. But yeah, so I had a pizza instead because I couldn't get any other real food. And honestly, I love mountain crossings, and even though there certainly is a noticeable markup for the things that they sell there, I feel like that's just like, I'm happy to know that to whatever degree it does, that helps them keep going, because that store is awesome. And I think it's important that any person going northbound has that experience if they choose, because it's just so, I don't know, it really makes it feel real. It's like, when you're first doing it, that's like the first check-in. And I've already said that, but I don't know. It's validating for nascent through hikers. But yeah, I think I was probably, I don't know what time I got to mountain crossings. It was probably like 10 something, I'd imagine. But certainly spent a good amount of time there, hanging out with everybody, talking, joking, resupplying, having multiple cups of coffee, reorganizing my backpack, which I weighed, if I didn't already mention that. It's 30.5 pounds with my resupply, which my resupply is 8 tuna and bean mix, like it's bagged tuna. It's like 200 calories each, which is not very many calories, and I was a little concerned about that because I don't want to carry a bunch of stuff, and I don't want to buy a bunch of food that's like 100 or 200 calories but doesn't have any actual like nutrition to it, no fat or protein. No, I don't want any candy. I don't want any like bars or crackers or anything like that. So I got these tuna things, and then I got a pack, like a big container, a squeezable container of mayonnaise, which I actually think is going to make everything taste amazing. And so those are my foods for the next 38 miles, yeah, which should be plenty. I think that pizza, I was already mentioning, I believe, that when I think about food, the way that I treat it is I sort of see it as a block system, where you just kind of insert the block of nutrition into your body, and then it's metabolized, and it just kind of restores your health bar. And I think that this food will be great to do that with. So I'm feeling good about all that. It's certainly on sort of another razor's edge, because it's not very much food, but there's no reason it shouldn't be enough. And if not, this is what I tell people when I do get on, I don't want to call it my high horse, so I'm going to call it my little donkey. When I get on my little donkey and give people unsolicited advice, which I try to caveat as much as possible by saying, like, please just don't even do this, but I just want to say this, well, I don't know, I view my time out here, every moment you spend in between resupply stops, that's like when I'm doing experiments, like I'm thinking about like my water carries, my food carries, my gear that I'm carrying, just like going over everything, trying to think if there's any other way I could dial everything in without suffering for it, And so I did also tell Hunter this morning, the guy from Pennsylvania, I was like, dude, like, again, I hate when people give advice, so I'm really not trying to do that. But I do want to say, because I thought that this was incredible when I realized it, that whole thing about not carrying water. And I was just like, he explained that he was having a little bit of water anxiety. And I was like, dude, I totally get that. I've biked across the desert on a bike with no name. And, I certainly am no stranger to worrying if I have enough water. Is there people around here? I feel like I smell cigarettes. I don't want to be talking into the fog like a lunatic. Hard to say. Wow, it's quite a setup over here. Anyway, whoa, raindrop on the phone screen. I think it's a Frank Sinatra song. Anyway, damn, what was I talking about? Got distracted. Water anxiety. Yeah, I was just, I guess, telling him, just don't carry water. Like, once you start to get comfortable being out here completely, like, so maybe a couple of weeks in or something like that, like, do little experiments, like, see how long you can walk. Like, carry a liter with you, sure, you can have a bailout, there's no problem with that. But, like, see how long you can go until you actually really feel like you need your first sip, and then kind of use that as your baseline. And then, you can get rid of carrying multiple pounds of water that you're not even drinking. That is really, truly, on this trail, which is just so famously wet, it is a shame if you have to carry water for any longer than you need to. But, and in the summer, different equation, you have to adjust everything for the heat, because, I think in terms of safety, you probably want to cut everything down to at least half. So I think for myself, in this kind of weather, if I was really pushing it, I could probably go for 3 hours with no water. I would definitely be thirsty. But, I could do most likely 9 or 10 miles in a pinch if I had to, without any kind of real detriment, because I'm staying hydrated throughout the day. But in the summer, I don't think I'd want to go any farther than 5 miles between stretches. And that would definitely be another equation for cameling up as well. So, anyway, good time was had at Mountain Crossing, and then I hit the trail again. Bid adieu to all my dudes, many of whom were staying at the bunkhouse there at Mountain Crossing. And, yeah, good for them, Mountain Crossing is a very special spot. I've never stayed there, but that was where I met two people before we actually really officially joined up. And we walked all the way to Katahdin together. So mountain crossings, that can be a special spot for somebody, without a doubt. But in any case, I jumped back on trail because I want to get there, just to the next place or whatever. But let's see. Wow. Okay. Got some heavy notes and I'm going uphill. So that's great. What were they? Okay. I don't know how much I want to talk about this, but yesterday I did get the sense at a certain point, I was like, I'm just someone who likes walking and happened to find the Appalachian Trail. Like, it's really kind of purely coincidental that I'm out here. Like, I wasn't a hiker before. I still don't really consider myself a hiker just because, it's not an important thing to my identity. But yesterday, I was thinking, God, can you tell I'm going uphill? Yesterday, I was thinking that the way that I hike is, usually listening to music for the majority of the day. And that just feels like modern worship to me. I really enjoy listening to my music and singing along with my songs and moving while I do it. So, yeah. I don't know if I had more in mind than just that for the note, but there you go, my dude. Ooh, this is a heavy one. Well, let's see how far I can talk about this. So, I have a friend, and he and I have had an ongoing conversation. In my defense, I would say that this conversation was completely unsolicited, but I can't, not respond, And it's primarily been about AI. And, if you haven't gathered already, I do have a bit of a soft spot for AI. And this was a podcast that was about, I guess, the theoretical dangers of using AI to determine morals and ethics. And my friend was like, this is kind of like what we've been talking about. And I was like, man, just based on the title, I was like, I highly doubt that. Not that he's wrong in his own interpretation of things that are going on, but in terms of how I was going to feel about it, I was like, dude, this is not going to hit home for me. I'm not going to identify with this. And sure, that's the priming that I had when I entered listening to it. So I was prepared to not find any resonance or feeling of being seen, but basically it was just a 30-minute episode with some sort of, I don't even know who she was, a scientist, a doctor, like a PhD or something like that. But she was just talking about what it could possibly mean if humans use AI to address morals and ethics. And some of the stuff they were talking about, I felt like was dated, And again, of course, this being sent to me, I am on the defense because I know that my friend is sending it to me as sort of like ammunition for his argument's side, which is basically that he doesn't like AI and that he thinks that it's bad, which I have told him countless times. I think the world is big enough for both of us to feel the way that we do about AI and not worry about what the other one does, but I digress and he persists. So this podcast, I was just listening to it, and I've talked about this elsewhere, maybe on the Book of Moron when I was going cross country on the bike, but I have grown very skeptical of human exceptionalism. I think that it's very convenient that we consider ourselves to be as important as we do, and as impactful as we do, and as in control as we do. Very convenient indeed when you are creating definitions for yourself. I personally don't believe that there's an objective measure to compare oneself to as a human being, to understand where we could possibly exist within some kind of a hierarchy of, shall we call it, doing your bestism, because again, we have no means of comparison. We are literally, as a species, an N of one, sample size containing one experimental variable, no control. So I personally don't think that human beings do a very good job or an applaudable job at really considering or dispensing morals and ethics, either personally or on a larger scale. I just think that emotions, it's such a corrupting factor that's just right there, just barely below the surface. And you would think morals and ethics, they're best based on logic as much as you can, in addition to things conveniently feeling good, the things that we would traditionally call good morals, good ethics. If you can't defend them logically, then at least on a philosophical level, it's hard to otherwise explain how that would be considered good. But in any case, I think about this human exceptionalism, which is our default because it's in our interest to think that, we are the top of what can be done. And so I think about proto-hominids, as one will do, and I think, okay, if there was a congregation, a united nation of proto-hominids, 20,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, something like that. So we're getting creatures together that have some semblance of consciousness that is more similar to our own than any other creature. And if all these different types of creatures got together and someone gave them, a newspaper headline from 2026, and they noticed maybe that there wasn't an adjoining newspaper that talked about Neanderthal issues or Australopithecus issues or I don't even know, all those proto-hominids, if they realized what was going to happen to them on this planet competing with us, which is to say that they would all experience complete annihilation and extinction, would they have voted against our continuation as an animal? And I think the answer is probably no. And so, I don't know. When it comes to morals and ethics with AI, I think that there is some sort of tangible structure to the fabric of reality that is pattern-based and can be explained well enough through math. And I think that human beings have done a remarkably good job of interpreting and decoding what that sequence that would describe perfect objective reality is, to the best of our abilities and to the best of our knowledge. But I think that we are plagued with things like visceral emotions and also just general, the human condition. You hunger, you wander, you get bored, you get tired, all the things that prevent you from a singular focus, And I just think that AI, with its much better ability to compute and synthesize data and truth from reality, I think that it will come to some sort of way to objectively measure something like the intrinsic worth of a human being in a way that I just don't simply think that we could, because we're always we're the judge, jury, and executioner of our own evaluation. So again, there's just no objectivity there. We'll see. My thoughts can always change, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. And so when I was listening to this episode, I was just like, it just struck me so much as a thou doth protest too much situation. I think, I wish, I envy the future, because the Luddites of whatever century the Luddites were from that protested against the creation of like some of the first industrial machines that led to automation. Like, if I wish those people had podcasts that I could listen to. I guess they probably have books. Now that I think about it, I can make my own podcasts with AI. But yeah, I mean, I just think that it's similar sentiment. Human beings, we are one-trick ponies. There's a reason why it's a cliche to say that those who don't remember the past are doomed to repeat it or whatever. Like, that's a real thing. We crash our heads against rocks many, many times before ultimately deciding that they are indeed hard, But yeah, I don't know. To me, it all just sounds like noise. It sounds like scared people talking about what they're scared about to make other people scared. And I just don't have time for that, Like, I don't want to pretend that for well, what should I say? I don't want to pretend like, if I am satisfied with how I feel about my internal world and the external world, and I feel like that they are in a harmonious balance more oftentimes than not, then I don't really want to worry about people talking to me about what they're worried about and then ask me if I will worry with them. It's just like, no, I won't. I don't have time for that. Like, why? What kind of transaction is this? Like, like, if you're ostensibly doing well and otherwise happy, why would you want to chase anything that would be contradictory to that? Like, that's just, to me, that's illogical. To me, I would consider that unethical to yourself. Like, sure, there's plenty of terrible things to think about. There's a lot of things to take responsibility for that you can't even impact or alter. But if you're fair to yourself and to the honest understanding of like what you can actually do to impact this world, which for most of us is precious little, then again, like, guarding your peace becomes vitally important if you value peace. And for me, multiple times in my life, I have come to the conclusion that that is my greatest value. It's like, that is what makes life worth it. It's like, I want to cultivate peace, and I enjoy doing that in difficult situations like this because it puts it to the test more, It's like, can you be at peace if a thunderstorm rolls through and you're up on a mountain and you could have stayed at a hostel drinking hot coffee and probably having beer, hanging out with people who, seemed like generally interesting and good people? Like, can you still be at peace? And for me, I know the answer is yes. Because it's just like, well, I wasn't ready to stop yet, For me, taking time off right now, this feels far too early. Like, hasn't even been a week yet. I have not even yet begun to stink, my dude. And there's plenty of hostels. I spent exactly as much time at that hostel as I wanted to, and I felt completely full, socially, dietarily, caffeine-wise. This is a good little climb. I can't wait to huff and puff my way through it. But yeah, my dude, human exceptionalism. Think about it, or don't. Doesn't matter to me. And we'll see. I'll try to report back if and when I have a change of feelings on that and why that might be the case. But yeah, as of right now, if you're seeking anything like capital T truth about reality, I think you have to be willing to confront the possibility and the humility of the fact that we are not the end-all be-all. I think I hear a grouse, maybe. They sound like helicopters in the leaves. It's kind of amazing how loud they can be. Anyway, So that was my mountain crossing experience. And then I have one more note, and then I'm definitely going to stop. But what was the other note? Okay. Now, this is just an observation. It's not a judgment or a moral, castigation. But I had an interesting experience when I was leaving mountain crossings, and I thought I would talk about it. So here it is. I walked past this guy who I had heard earlier, negatively muttering to himself, using profane words and sounding generally very unhappy. And, I gave him a wide berth. At a certain point, I went outside to fill up some water. I passed him and I said, living the dream, my dude. And he was more like a expletive nightmare. And I was like, well, that's just the flip side of the dream, my dude. But yeah, he seemed very upset. And I was like, dude, this is the happiest place on earth. And the weather's not even that bad right now. What could be upsetting you so badly? And so, again, just gave him a wide berth. I gave him a chance to not feel excluded as he fumed and pouted. But, I'm not here to save everybody. So, went on along about my needfuls and ended up running into him shortly after leaving mountain crossings. And boy, was he talkative. He was still pretty upset. He repeated the story of why he was upset no less than twice within a 5-minute period. And it was interesting to me because I thought to myself, this man is very upset about what his hiking partner did to him, which basically, as far as he's explained it to me twice, was that I guess they had at some point made a plan to stay at mountain crossings for about 20 minutes so that this man who had left could charge his phone and then I guess the guy who wasn't charging his phone decided that he was going to buy a new backpack, stay at the hostel, and I guess take the rest of the day off. And so this guy felt betrayed by his partner and was pretty upset about it. And, he's maybe 10 years older than me, maybe not. But somewhere within that range, in between me and my parents for sure. But it was just very interesting to see an adult man be so upset and have seemingly no way of soothing himself other than just to repeat the offense that they felt had been dealt to them so unjustly. And I was just fascinated because I was like, I'm actively watching someone, this is his toolkit for getting over stuff. And I was just kind of shocked at how, what I basically felt like I was witnessing. And again, I say this respectfully just as someone who witnessed it and then interpreted it through my own biased lens. But what I saw was a man basically behaving like an 8-year-old. And the adult thing to do, honestly, just the thing to do that the trail would suggest would be to be like, hey man, it's the whole hike your own hike thing. This guy was so dependent on his friend doing exactly what he said he was going to do that when the equation changed and his friend altered his choices and altered his plans, all of a sudden that meant that this man, the man who was pouting, maybe that should be the name of the episode, the pouty man, that meant that his plans then had to change. And boy, was he holding on so dearly to those previous plans that I suppose he was counting on. But again, that's one of the most important things on the trail for me. It's it's very important that you are accountable to yourself, and also very important that you are reliant on yourself, because it's dangerous to trust what others are going to do, one of the things that human beings do a lot is change their mind, or simply wrestle with decisions. Maybe commitment is a better way of describing what human beings often do. Humans struggle with that. We are flaky by nature. I often say, especially out on the Appalachian Trail, how fickle we are, because we can complain about the heat one day, and then once it's a freezing cold day, then we're like, man, I'd give anything for it to be 120 degrees. And then it's like, well, actually you wouldn't. You would equally hate that. It's just funny. Grass is greener kind of thing. But it was just very interesting to me to watch this guy, because I was instantly putting myself in his shoes, and I was like, what? Let me pretend like I'm this dude, and let me pretend like I really needed to do something specific. Now, if he had been industrious, the pouty man, he could have certainly, the main thing he wanted to do was to charge his phone at Mountain Crossing before heading back on the trail. Now, I actually had extra cables depending on what kind of phone he had, and plugs and stuff like that. And so what I would have done, and again, this is not me moralizing, this is me pretending like this situation is a word problem and I have to solve it with an explanation of my own behavior. I would have sourced a cable and a plug from someone else. Like, if this dude, all of a sudden you can't rely on him to do what he said he was going to do, if you don't have your own stuff, which I'd actually say is the first thing you should do, you should absolutely, at a minimum, have most of the ththings that you need. There's obviously a lot of room, especially at the beginning, to make mistakes and realize things as you go. But having a charging plug, that's pretty basic. I would put that there. Honestly, I wouldn't go on a trip like this without a charging plug. It's as important as anything else that I carry. You have to be able to, if the people who you rely on all of a sudden flake out and decide to do something completely different, you have to be able to right the ship. You need to have the fortitude to not take that personally, because odds are, most people aren't terrible people who are doing everything out of maliciousness. The odds are they're just having a moment where the environment has caused them to change their mind, because now here they are. It's just a stimulus response. In the woods, it's easy to say something, but then once you're actually surrounded by a warm building with food and smiling faces, it can be very tempting for people. They can go so far as to even go against their word. So I just thought that was so interesting, because I was like, I wonder how much time this guy is going to spend being upset, because that just sucks. To think that you could be out here and waste a single solitary moment on being upset because of something that someone else did. Even if they did lie to you, or even if they did go back on what they said unmaliciously, it's just dude, who cares? It doesn't matter. There's no reason to be mad at yourself or anyone else, and it's just it's such a regrettable use of time. There's a really good song by this guy, I don't remember, I forgot his name. Because I listen to music most of the time while I'm exercising. I don't oftentimes actually look at the song titles or even the artists. It doesn't matter. But yeah, there's this song, and I can't even remember the lyrics. Dang, what a bummer. If I was a little bit more crafty, I would try to insert the song at the end of this clip. Maybe I still will. But the lyrics are something about broadly speaking, that you only have so much time on Earth, and because that's true, if you spend a lot of time thinking about negative stuff, then that limited time that you have is going to feel negative. And of course, duh, everyone knows that. That's not the hard part. The hard part is actually figuring out how to not think about negative things. And at least for me, when I have my more negative moments, if they're so consuming that I feel like I need to do something to excise them from my mind, I'll just create gratitude poems from them, it worked like a frickin' charm in San Francisco, you know. You have to go back into the Book of Moron. I don't think I ever talked about it directly, but hey, if you send me an email, I'll explain to you what I'm talking about. Yeah, all that just to say, like, you know, life is certainly short, and it sucks to suck, and, like, yeah, happiness is an active pursuit. It's not a passive state. Like, you don't just get happy. You don't just become happy. This is my philosophy. Your your mileage may vary, but yeah, you have to pursue happiness. Like, it's not a state that you get because of just merely existing. Because again, I think life is suffering, and so like happiness is something that kind of takes place behind suffering's back, you know. And it's almost like a twisted little thing that happens, especially when you can find happiness or gratitude inside of otherwise pretty objective suffering, either physically or mentally or spiritually, whatever you want to call it. Like, that has been my salve for many years, you know. And honestly, I have to credit the Appalachian Trail. Thank you. The sun just came out a little bit, so it's kind of like a little baby opening its eye. But yeah, you know, it's just like, you know, it's hard to know how to account for other people. And that's why I generally don't try. I mean, I judge for sure, and I have my own theories to my satisfaction, but I also am very aware that I know almost absolutely nothing about anyone. You know, it's taken me 36 years just to even know an ounce about myself. So, you know, I don't spend a lot of time pretending to know people and their stories and their experiences. And so any kind of judgments that I have, I understand they are most likely purely fictions, and they very likely say absolutely nothing about the person who I am crafting them for and of, you know. And so I'm willing to, for certain people, navigate through, like, testing my theories. I'll ask them questions that are based on the way I've kind of sized them up, and I'll let them correct the record, you know. They're the expert. They know themselves better than anyone else, even if it is only an ounce or a half ounce or whatever it is. So, whatever. It's all good. Well, great. 57 minutes. I'm satisfied with that. And yeah, the fog's kind of cleared out a little bit, both between my ears and on the scenery in front of me. I'd rather have a scenery in front of me than in front of me and scenery, if you know what I'm saying. And yeah, the path is clear. I've got, like, I can see for any number of feet now, which is kind of cool. I do appreciate having gone through both the heavy, dense fog and now a little bit of respite. You know, I could be way wrong. I have no idea if it's supposed to be bad thunderstorms today. Looking at the sky around me, that seems very hard to believe. And if there is storms to come through, it's going to have a very long preamble. So, like the people I just met were saying, it would make sense if it happened after dark tonight. But as of right now, the horizon looks generally clear. I mean, it's definitely still cloudy, but there are definitely patches of blue. And nothing about the sky right now makes me feel like I need to retreat. But man, people sure do love fear-mongering on the Appalachian Trail, especially if it justifies for them why they're staying in town and not going back on it. When that dude told me the thunderstorms were coming, I was like, dude, like, you're staying in town. Like, don't tell me, like, don't, it goes back to, like, the advertising, like, don't tell me how to feel about going back on the trail. Like, you enjoy that, how you're going to feel, and revel in that, and let me go out there unencumbered by your fears. Again, you know, fears are twice as heavy when they're shared, ironically. So don't take me down with a ship, my dude. All right, I'll leave it there for now and get back to the egregious podcast I was listening to. Love you, bye.